Okay. So yesterday, 45, 45, 90. Today, we're readjusting into a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. Both triangles, yesterday with 45, 45, and today's with 30, 60, both of them are still right triangles. Okay, they're both still right triangles with a 90 degree, but the difference is yesterday's was equilateral, same angles, therefore same sides. But today, we have different angles, one being 30 degrees, one being 60 degrees, and one being 90. What do all three of those angles add up to be anyway? 180. Good job. Okay, they all add up to be 180 degrees. Now, the difference between yesterday's triangle and our triangle today. Our triangle today has what I consider to be a home base. Meaning, like if you're playing kickball, actually I'm not sure that's a really good example. If you're playing a game, maybe you guys can help me think of the game that it would be, that if you want to be safe, if you like are out running around and somebody's trying to tag you or get you, but if you stand on home base, you're safe. Nobody can touch you there. Okay? That's what 30 tag is kind of like that. That's what a 30, 60, 90 triangle is like. You want to get to home base. And when you're at home base, then you're free to go wherever you want. But until you're at home base, we're restricted. Our home base, so to speak, is our short side. Our short side is going to be found by looking at the side directly opposite of 30 degrees. So in this case, A is my short side. I'm going to call that home base. Because it's from home base that we can find one leg of the triangle. It's from home base that we can find the hypotenuse. No other side can we find the other except from home base. You've got to be, I cannot stress this enough, you have to be at home base in order to find either the hypotenuse or the, I'm going to call it the medium-sized leg. You have to be at home base. You have to be where that short side is in order to go from one to the other. Mrs. Meyer, what the heck are you talking about? Here it is. So our short base is A. Could be X, could be 3, could be 525, okay? But we're going to call it A. If I want to go that way, that's the side that is opposite 60 degrees. We're going to call this the medium. I lack for a better word. The medium side, I almost called it medium leg. Okay, we're going to just call that medium because this is short. Then we have medium. And isn't the hypotenuse our largest side? Okay, but we can still consider it to be the hypotenuse. Okay? To go to the medium side, if I had A, and then to get to the medium side, I now have A times the square root of 3. Guess what I'm going to do every single time to go from the short side to the medium side?
Square root of 3.
Multiply by square root of 3. Very good, Isaac. You did a very good job answering that question. Thank you. So from the short side to the medium side, I'm multiplying by the square root of 3. Now notice, I'm not going to go from the medium side to the hypotenuse. I'm coming back to the short side. I'm coming back to home base. Once I'm at home base now, I want to get to the hypotenuse. If I'm at A, at the home base, and I want to get to 2A, I multiplied it by, thank you, Kennedy, times 2. Everything is in reference to the short side. Everything's in reference to the short side. Now let's throw a little wrench in the situation. Let's say the hypotenuse is given. That's the only thing that's given. And I want to get to the short side. I want to reverse this. Instead of multiplying by 2, I'm going to divide by 2. Very good, Anna. I'm going to divide by 2. And then I'm at home base. And then from home base, I can get to my medium side. Well, let's say the medium side is given. I need to get to home base. To get from the short side to the medium side, I multiply by the square root of 3. But if I want to do the reverse, guess what I have to do? Divide by the square root of 3. okay? So now we're going to put that into practice down below, but before we get started, I want to go through these trig functions. In a couple sections, we're going to be looking at what's called a unit circle, and these trig functions are going to come in super handy, and you're going to see some of these values repeating themselves over and over and over again. So let's just do this real quick. The sine of 30. We know that sine is, what's our ratio of the legs for sine? Opposite over hypotenuse. Perfect. Opposite over hypotenuse, so that makes it A over 2A. Now remember, I'm looking in terms of 30 degrees. So opposite of 30 is my short side. What happens to my A's if I've got one in the numerator and one in the denominator? They cancel out, but remember, the 2's in the denominator needs to stay put, so I have to write it as 1 over 2. Okay? Oh. There you go. Okay, 1 over 2. Cosine of 30. I'm still looking in terms of this angle, 30 degrees right here. Adjacent over hypotenuse. Good job. So my adjacent side is the medium side here, a times the square root of 3, all over my hypotenuse, which is 2a. A's cancel. I'm left with square root of 3 over 2. Notice, guys, I don't have a calculator out. I'm not finding a decimal here. I'm leaving things in a ratio as a fraction. I'm leaving them as adjacent over hypotenuse. This is called the exact value. I'm not rounding. If I would take this to a decimal, I'd have to round. We want them left as exact values. Tangent is opposite, and again, I'm looking in terms of 30 degrees, opposite over adjacent. A's cancel. 1 over square root of 3. Okay, now let's move to 60 degrees. So now my eyes are going to go from 30 down here to 60. So now everything is in reference to 60 degrees. So my opposites and adjacents are going to switch, because now I'm looking in terms of 60 degrees. So opposite of 60 is a square root of 3. Hypotenuse stays the same for everything for that particular triangle. My a's cancel, and I'm left with square root of 3 over 2. Cosine is adjacent, so adjacent's my short side, over hypotenuse. Cancel, cancel. I'm left with 1/2. Pause right there. What's curious about sine of 30, cosine of 30 versus sine of 60, cosine of 60? What do you notice?
They're not capitalized.
They're not capitalized, this one over here. What's opposite? The sine of 30 is the same as the cosine of 60. The sine of 60 is the same as the cosine of 30. When we get to our unit circle, we're going to see how and why. Well, we can see how and why right here through this 30, 60, 90 triangle, but we're going to put that into play in a week or two down the road. So tangent of 60, opposite over adjacent. Well, look there. And if I wrote that as the square root of 3 over 1, you'll notice they're reciprocals of one another. Tangent of 30 and tangent of 60, reciprocals of one another. Okay, so we're going to hold on to those. And then we're going to move down to these examples down below. Everybody have that? Okay, so we have A. I've got a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. And I want to find my home base. I want to find the short side that is opposite the 30 degrees. Lucky for us, it's 7. It is given. So I'm very straightforward. If the short side is given, I can just move right on to get to the hypotenuse. From the short side to the hypotenuse, I multiply by 2. So the hypotenuse becomes 14. Now notice, I go back to the home base. I'm coming back to home. And now I'm going to go over here to the medium side. And from the home base, it's where I always start, I multiply by square root of 3. So this becomes 7 times root 3. So everything is in reference to home, which is my short side. Okay? All right, let's look at B. 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. First thing I want to do is find my home base, my short side. Okay? It's not given. Okay, it's not given. Which side is given?
Medium.
The mediums. I'm just going to label that as M, and then my hypotenuse is H. So I've got S, M, H. Sarah and Haley Meyer. Okay? All right, so there's my 3 sides right there. My medium side is given. Where do I want to go from here?
Home.
I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go to the short side. So from the medium side to the short side, typically to go from short to medium, I'd be multiplying by the square root of 3. But to do the reverse, what am I doing?
Divide by the square root of 3.
I'm dividing by the square root of 3. So it's 4 over root 3. And now that I found home, I can go directly now to the hypotenuse. I'm not going backwards, I'm doing direct. So it's multiplication. And I'm multiplying by the numerator only. So I get 8 over square root of 3. Everything is in reference to home base. If the short side is not given, you have to, that's the first step, is get to the short side. So you'll be doing, if the short side home base is not given, you'll be doing 1 division and then 1 multiplication. Let's look at C. Unless, do you guys have questions so far?
How'd you get 3?
Where, babe?
On the short side of B.
Right here?
No, to the left. No, yeah, on the short side. But you have.
That's short.
it's an S.
Oh, that's an S.
Yeah.
What did you think it was?
A 3.
You know, it would be backwards, but, you know, when you're looking like that, you know, yes, that is an S. Thank you, Brendan, for recognizing that. So S equals 4 over square root of 3. That's an M, medium, H, that. Got it? Okay. All right, C. First thing, locate my short side. This is an S representing short side. My medium side is over here, opposite 60, and looks like my hypotenuse is what's given. And if you can't tell, that is a 4. Okay, so what I did is I labeled everything so that I know where I'm at. If the hypotenuse is given, where do I want to go? I want to go home. I want to go home. So to get home from the hypotenuse, I do the reverse. So I am dividing by 2. Typically from short to hypotenuse, I'd be multiplying by 2. But to do the reverse, so I'm going to take 4 divided by 2, I get 2. And now that I'm home, I can clearly get to the other side, straightforward. And to go from home, short side, to the medium side, multiply by square root of 3. So this becomes 2 square root of 3. Okay? Questions on that? Looking at D. Looking at a little geometry here. We are assuming, it does not say, that AB is congruent with BC. Okay, we're making that assumption. It's not written there, but we're making that assumption. And we're also making the assumption that CDB and BDA are congruent, that each of these angles are congruent with the other angle. Okay, we're just going to make that assumption. So we know that AB is 10. So here's AB, that's 10. And if AB is congruent to BC, what's the length of BC? 10. And BC is 30. DCB is 60. And then BDC is a right angle. Okay, all we did was we just filled in 30, 60, 90. Okay. So now that I have all my angle measurements located, I'm looking at, there's my short side. That looks like a 5. It's an S. Mrs. Meyer needs to work on her handwriting. That's my S. Opposite 60 is my medium side. And 10, opposite of 90, is my hypotenuse. Okay? If the hypotenuse is given, where do I want to go? I want to go home. So the first thing I do from hypotenuse to short side is I divide by 2, so it makes my short side 5. Short side to medium side, multiply by square root of 3. And so the medium side becomes 5 times square root of 3. Questions? Class, that concludes our lesson on 30, 60, 90 degree triangles. Thank you for joining in.